What's going on, everybody? It's the Notorious one, CGA, back in here with a most wanted video. This video I've been teasing for about several months, almost a year, and I finally can bring you the information that I've been talking about for a long time now. If you're new to me, do me a favor, hit the like button and subscribe. My name is Coach Greg Adams. I go by the Notorious CGA over here, and I've been working for years, for about 7 years on YouTube, helping men through issues related to family, law, custody, divorce, marriage, relationships, and so forth and so on. Now, the topic that you see right now, it has a title that is very provocative. This title is to draw controversy, to see what a lot of people believe about this subject matter, because millions and millions of Americans are going through this issue with the family court, divorce, and marriage, and child custody. Now, if you want to hear more about this topic related to other people, follow my other channels, the Coach Greg Adams channel, the Free Agent Lifestyle channel. I cover these topics with a variety of people, from celebrities to normal, average, everyday people, and all of that. And so you can learn about maybe something going on in your case. Now, if you're considering having a family, please understand my situation does not mean that you're going to go through this exact same situation, right? Divorces are all different. All marriages are different. All divorces are different. So I'm not going to tell you that you're going to go through this. My situation is pretty extreme, all right? But it has taught me a lot. I got a PhD or an honorary JD going through this. I've probably been to more court hearings than actual attorneys, because typically attorneys try to settle cases. In my case, it was high conflict, so there was no settling, all right? I did have what I call a baby mama terrorist who did not want to settle, would just try to drag me into misery to avoid me having contact with my kids. So now that we got that started, do me a favor, join the Money Mindset, patreon.com/Coach Greg Adams. If you're a Coach Gang member, you can get an idea of how I talk about how men need to change their mindset around dating, relationships, and marriage, and lifestyle around money. So it's the mindset. We're not educating you per se on money, because I'm not a financial expert. All right, but what I have done is been able to show you how to go from living in your car, restarting your life, and redirecting your attention so that you're not out here drifting, being distracted. So what we teach you is how to focus on the things that you need to do so you can go from the situation that I've been through, all right, homeless, divorced, change a career, redirecting my life and philosophy on what I wanted to do. So we're changing the mindset around money and how you see it and how you should prepare your life and your lifestyle around it. All right, so with that being said, let's get into it. Should a man fight for their kids? All right, you hear a lot of times that women will say, well, he didn't fight hard enough for me in the relationship. He didn't fight hard enough for his kids in his relationship. Well, I've been a father, and I'm still a father, and I fought twice in the family court and spent almost in excess of $100,000 in court fees. And I dare say it's probably closer to $200,000 when you break down everything that I've lost, had to redirect, and so forth and so on. Okay, but a lot of people will say men need to fight for their kids. Now, here's where the problem is. Because men have to fight for their kids, that's a reason why men shouldn't have to fight for their kids. Okay, normally what a baby mama terrorist means is that you're going to have to jump through all these hoops and hurdles and all these landmines and distractions and flares in order for you to see your kid. But in our country, we don't have mandatory DNA testing. We also don't have 50-50 right down the middle in terms of custody, although we're hearing a lot of need for equity and 50-50 in relationships. When it comes down to custody, there's no 50-50. Now, states are starting to get a little more lenient to start off at 50-50 and then try to see if there's any forms of abuse, neglect, or any of those things that may change the reason for full custody. But women have found a way around that by saying that they came from an abusive relationship. They also file temporary restraining orders, and these restraining orders do serve to establish some sort of abuse. And that can sway the child custody. And that makes the father have to fight that much harder for their kids. And that's the sad part about it. And that's the reality. So although 50-50 might be the presumed starting point for custody battles, most of the time, women that are forcing men to fight for custody are restricting access to the children initially to establish a pattern of parenting where the mother has more parenting than the father. Then the man has to go through all kind of court actions to be able to push it back to 50-50. And if he doesn't fight, well, then that's the standard of parenting, whether it's every other weekend or whether she wants to have a say in when the parent, the father, is allowed to see the kids. And if there's any child support related to this, which it almost inevitably is when parents have to fight for their kids, normally the mother can try to restrict custody illegally because the father has not paid child support. Okay, so these are all the games that are played. And unfortunately, I got caught in the middle of this. So let me give you an understanding of how I started. So I was married in 2004, separated at the end of 2012, beginning of 2013, fully divorced in 2014, right at the end of 2014. My initial divorce took 18 months for a less than 9-year marriage. Okay, because there was very high conflict. We got attorneys involved. We started off with mediation. We started to negotiate initially. Then we went to mediation. Then it was a full-scale war. Now, the problem was I'm self-employed, so it's really hard to determine what my income actually is. And since that's the case, that's meat on the table or meat on the bones for her. So she could not figure out what my income was, so she kept hiring forensic accountants and attorneys to establish this. She not only did this once in 2012, 2013, and 2014, she did it again in 2022, 2023, and 2024. So this is her pattern of behavior, and basically I'm her job since I'm self-employed. Now, we'll get to the self-employment later. So going through the timeline again, we're fully divorced in 2014, but I was granted 50-50 custody in 2013. Now that threw their game off because they wanted 85% custody. That's what she asked for in the initial divorce, 85%, 15% to me, which was 1 day a week, middle of the week for dinner, then every other weekend. That was it. I fought it and it cost me probably $50,000, okay, just to fight that. Plus lost wages, stress, the distraction of fighting, and then all of the things that the kids have to consume because every time there was a school event, she was acting a monkey. All right. She was showing her whole ass. All right. She was trying to get everybody else involved in the matter, that from daycare workers, teachers, administrators. And she did this pretty much the entire length of our childhood or my kids' childhood. So let's take you through the court. So we went to court every year until my eldest was 18 and my son is 17. Every year. So we separated in 2012. We were in court 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. Now, 2021 was the only year we weren't in court, and that was because of COVID. But we were back in court first month, January 2022, 2023, and 2024. Now, by that point, my daughter's 18. So we in here battling for custody and child support the entire time. Now, one situation I was granted full custody because there was a health situation that she got into, but because she left to handle this health situation, I had to get full custody of the kids, but I had to fight for it. And I had to remove child support from her because she was still on child support, but now living in the state, and I had full custody. Now, that then made it so, and that was around 2016 or 2017. Now, from 2016 to 2023, I was not on child support, but I had 50-50 custody, and I had full custody for about 6 to 8 months, and then back to 50-50 when she returned. Then there was no child support. Now, the reason why is because it's hard to establish a child support case with 50-50, although in the state of California, you can get 50-50 custody and still have to pay child support. So initially from 2013 to 2016, I was paying child support, a very low amount because of the 50-50 custody. But I was father of the year. I coach all my kids' sports. I coach my daughter in tennis. I end up getting them into a prestigious private school in which me and another person paid. She paid $0. I paid half of it and another person contributed another half of it. Okay, so setting this up around COVID, my business that I was in started to fall apart, all right, because I was a fitness trainer at the time, but I was independent. we needed to be able to rent space from gymnasiums, gyms. And I basically went from gym to gym, home to home to train my clients in Newport Beach, California. However, there was a lot of COVID restrictions and people were fearful with COVID, right? People didn't want to pass the COVID, right? Gym owners could only have a certain amount of people in the gym. So they started to restrict the amount of people that can be in gyms. So in essence, I started to lose clients that I had built up from 2012 all the way up to 2020. And I was quite upset about it. However, fortunately, I was starting to do YouTube in 2017 and 2018. And I was working 2 jobs essentially. So I was making income from YouTube, income from my fitness. So what I was able to do was double dip or just dive in and go all in on YouTube and then slowly lose all of my fitness business. That then gave me an opportunity to work from home and take care of my kids who at this point were teenagers going to high school. So they went COVID middle school. By the time they're into 2021, 2022, they're in high school. Now, from there, I wanted to relocate to Nevada. Now, the reason for the relocation was I was working from home, California, high tax rate. I was starting to make a good income, and also the cost of living in California was exceptional. But by this time, my daughter's 16, my son is 15. There was a little bit of parental alienation going on there. So my daughter decided she wanted to move with her mother. Now that is a longer story, but since I'm not going to talk about my daughter personally, she's an adult now, I'm not going to talk about our relationship on the internet. All right. So I'm not going to bring that part in, but our relationship was good. It started to sour over 6 months. You got to remember at this time, my income did start to go up. I started to live a certain lifestyle. I started to travel and I started to have season tickets to sports events. And also I started to be seen in a certain car, all right, a Porsche. I believe this started the parental alienation. My daughter also got a dog for Christmas at my house. And that vlog is available on this channel. So when she was in high school, she got a dog. She had always wanted a dog for Christmas. I got it for her, but it was only for my house. It couldn't go back and forth between co-parents. I believe at this time there was a significant amount of parental alienation, and I was able to prove this, but I'm not going to go too deep into that. So she wanted to move with her mother. It was a high conflict situation. I didn't press. I said, go ahead. But I started to think about moving to Vegas. My son said, hey, whenever you move to Vegas, I want to come with you. Now, in order to make this happen, you have to agree. Both parents have to agree, or you have to go through the courts because the states own the kids. So your state owns your kid, especially in a divorce. They belong to the state. The kid belongs to the state. So we tried to negotiate a move for my son and myself. You got to get permission, if you will, from the court. You got to notify them. Now, we tried to negotiate and I gave her a 3-month warning. Unfortunately, she started to play games. So she was waiting for the move to occur. She knew the move was going to come up. She delayed the negotiation and the mediator, and then I made the move. Now, once I made the move, she went right to court to establish full custody, like the next day. Soon as I moved to Las Vegas, she goes to court for no visitation, no custody after 3 months of trying to negotiate. And what she wanted me to do was sign the kids up to school because I was the parent that on record at the kid's school. Since I was paying the full tuition, or I was paying the majority of the tuition, she was paying none at this private school, I was the parent on record. So she could not withdraw or she could not sign the kids up. It was on my plate. But she said, sign the kids up for school. And I said, well, listen, my son wants to move with me. I'll sign up the daughter. And she said, no, sign both of them up. Obviously, once I signed them up for school, then the kids are both in California. Just a little bit of games that she's playing. So as soon as I moved to Vegas, basically what I had to do was, since the move cost a lot and I was making quite an adjustment, I waited to file the action. Now, I could have filed the action before I left. For anybody that might say, hey, coach, why didn't you file before you left? Well, let me tell you that. If I would have filed before I left, I would not have been able to move. All right, because eventually this case, and I'm going to get to it, this case cost me $50,000. Okay, so imagine if I say, I want to move to Nevada. She says no, I fight her on it. The case took 2 years to finish. From start to finish, it took 2 years and $50,000 out of my pocket. So there goes the move. In essence, I would have to have stayed in California. You see how that works? So there's a lot to unpack because there's a lot of people that will say, well, why did you do this and why didn't you do that? Well, if I would have said, okay, I'm going to fight you for my son to move to Las Vegas. I'm not even in Las Vegas. I'm still in California. All right. So then I would have had to pay all of the attorney's fees to even get the move to happen, which would have taken a year or two. And it would have been a preemptive strike to even move at all, because that would have been all the resources. The resources that just went to the lawyers and the court. So I made the move anyway. Now, during this time, my daughter made no visits, but my son made visits routinely. We end up going for vacations and holidays. We went to New York. We also went to Cleveland for a Drake concert. He came as much as he can against her initial wishes. She tried to prevent him from coming, but he's 15 or 16, going to 16. He just would Uber to the airport and I would pay him the ticket. Okay. So we were just going over her head. Now, he was asking her, can I move with dad? And I'll think about it. Then she said, well, he'll have to fight me for it. Now you got to remember, by this time, my kids are 17 and 16. And at a prestigious private school. Now, let me just tell you, they had to be removed from that school because I didn't re-sign them up. Why? Because I'm trying to move my son to Nevada, to another private school. So they had to go to a public school in the interim. So their whole lives got readjusted because she wanted to not have the kids visit me at all. She filed for no visitation, no custody immediately after I moved to Las Vegas. And they granted her that until a hearing. Now, a couple of things here. This is 2022 when I moved to Nevada. I then got visitation with my son. She couldn't block it, but he wanted to move, and he basically was like, you're ruining my life, but I can't speak too much on that. Now, from that year, 2022 to 2023, I never got process served. So they couldn't move forward with the case. The reason why I couldn't move forward, or they couldn't move forward with the case, is because they could not locate me. Now, that was their problem. It wasn't my problem. They couldn't find my address, but my son didn't know the address. They didn't have the address, so they could not serve me. And if you know anything about court, if they don't serve you, there's no case. Okay, there's no case. So they basically were trying to find me for a period of time until I filed for full custody of my son. So I ended up allowing them to find me. Now, this case gets a little bit more complicated because when she filed the no visitation full custody, she was trying to get child support from the day I moved until the kids are 18, and also preventing my son from moving. So remember, I didn't pay child support from 2016 to 2022. That's because I had 50-50 custody. She sees my income go up and lifestyle. She then alienates me from my kid and then tries to alienate me from my son as well. Files no visitation, no custody on the day after the move, and then tries to process serve me, which they could not. By the time I filed for my son to move, which was, I guess it would have been a year and a half later. So he went through his sophomore and junior year in high school. I finally filed. Once I filed, then that initiated me having an attorney, her having an attorney. Now, we had also a child support case attached to it. So once I filed, child support then said, oh, that's where he is. Then they found me. Then they said, you have arrears from as far as they could go back. Now, they initially wanted to go back to 2022, but they can only go back to 2023 because that's when they found me. So very complicated thing here. Now, she's trying to get child support on what she presumes is a very high 5-figure a month income. And she throws a number out there of what she assumes that I make. But again, I'm self-employed. There's no record of what I exactly make. I couldn't even tell you what I make. However, she puts her income very low. So she's trying to get arrears on a year and a half back. Possibly she's trying to get 2 years of arrears in child support by preventing the move and then filing no visitation, no custody on both kids. This is how sick people are. They're sick. But I digress. So I hired an attorney. I hired a firm, and they put a dumb, dim-witted attorney on the case, first of all. So she's stretching the case out. This attorney was absolutely garbage, all right? Garbage. Now, she did decent when it was time to do hearings, but for some reason, I felt she was dragging it out. So I had to call the firm and was like, this is ridiculous, because every time we would go to court, there was a continuation. Now, that wasn't her fault. There were 3 continuations in my case with the custody hearing, but every time the custody hearing had a continuation, the child support hearing would progress. So they would get progressing worse and worse and worse. So then they hired not a forensic accountant. They end up doing a demand for production, which is basically me producing all my receipts, my credit card statements, my tax returns, all bank accounts, all investment accounts, all crypto accounts and everything. So they did 2 to 3 demand for productions, during in which every time my custody hearing keeps getting continued. So it got continued 3 times in, I would say, 8 months. So I never was getting to the court for custody. I kept getting to the court for child support. Now, for that attorney, that was ended up working against her. Now, that helped their pockets because my attorney bill running up. So my retainers being spent and my attorney bills are just running sky high. At the end of my case, I ended up paying $25,000 to $30,000 in attorney's fees for a 16, now 17-year-old son to live with me. Now, he's already gone through his sophomore and junior year by the time we're getting the case going, and he would only have his senior year left. So he lost 2 years that he would have been with me, and he's quite pissed about this. So eventually what happened was we eventually get to the custody case, but the child support was based on 96% custody of my son for her, 99% custody for the daughter. That makes a very high child support amount, and the child support amount ended up being, going back arrears wise, it ended up being $1,500 a month. All right, but that was based on not my income that they assumed. They couldn't figure it out. It was based on the income that I provided. She wanted way more than $1,500 a month. I think she was looking for $6,000 a month, but she ended up getting $1,500 a month. But then they got that $1,500 a month on both kids retroactively. So then I think it was ended up being $12,000 to $15,000 that I owed her right away, like immediately. Now, of course, child support allows you to have arrears, but then if they find any bank accounts, they're basically going to take that. They're going to intercept that money. Tax returns, bank accounts, anything, investment accounts, they're going to intercept it. So they ended up intercepting it while I was on vacation in Hawaii. And they ended up taking $20,000 out of my account. All right, crazy story, but that's a whole nother story. But the bottom line is eventually by the time we get to the custody case, she was going to lose. So they ended up hiring a child custody investigator. This is basically a social worker that will interview all family members and then determine where the child should go in a high conflict case. So we all get interviewed by a child custody investigator. This is different than a guardian ad litem. It's not an attorney, it's a social worker. So a social worker interviews all family members and they determine what's the best course of action. And we went through the interview process, and then they came up with some like 20-page paper, basically culminating our entire divorce. Unfortunately, it did not work out for the baby mama terrorist. She loses because when I got the custody agreement, my lawyer was a day behind. I got it in the mail. When I got the child custody investigator's report, I turned to the back page and it says my son gets to move with the father. So I win, but also I lose $50,000. Okay, so the whole fight, the second time from 2022 to 2024 cost me $50,000. And that's just $50,000 in child support that she was able to get. Also $25,000 to the attorney. Then you even have to count that there was some future child support up until my daughter turned 18 and graduated, which eventually by the end of the case, my daughter was 18. Okay, so By the time we're fighting this out, she turns 18. Then she graduates, which in California, once you graduate and you're 18, you're off child support. So she was only on child support for 3 extra months. My son then comes off of child support as well because I'm the primary father. You see, this is what it is fighting for your kids. This is what it looks like. This might be an extreme case, but I know people that have had extremer cases. And I also know men that know their case is going to look like this, so they don't fight at all. So when people say fight for your kids, this is what I'm talking about. Why should a father have to fight for their kids? Why do they have to go through this? Well, that's because the family court is tailor-made for these solutions, these type of fights. They're made for this. They extend them out. They get the attorneys to get paid on both sides. Everybody wins. The court clerk wins, the judge wins, the process server wins, the attorney wins, and guess who loses? One parent and the kids. Okay? The other parent might say you won. Now, I'll never say I won custody because really somebody lost. And now you have another parent that's going to carry on this type of BS into the kid's adult life, which that's what we have now. Now, this affected my daughter's high school graduation because this conflict had just been resolved the same week my daughter was graduating from high school. All right, so there was a lot of conflict there. Also, it will continue on to college because now who's going to pay for college? That was money that I was saving for my kids to go to college. Child support ends up intercepting it. My baby mama Tara says there's money there. I want it, and I have full custody. In order to do that, she has to restrict access to the kids for me. Now, last point, somebody might say, you could just take the kids. Well, if I would have just taken my son with me, I would have had the ATF, the DEA, the CIA, the FBI, Amber Alert, everybody else, because she knows who I am and I am an internet personality. That would have been a disaster. I would have been on the news. And I would have risked going to jail because those kids belong to the state. Although we are the parentage, we're the parents, the state has that kid. So I can't legally take a kid from one state to the other. Now you can if you know she's not going to fight. Unfortunately, I knew she was going to fight. So there's no point in taking a kid like that because she was immediately going to go to the authorities and it would have been arrest time for me because she certainly would have escalated it like that and then went for embarrassment because I already know how she is. I mean, just look at what we ended up with. Now on her side, she loses. She's disgruntled and now she, feels like that, she lost her kids. And unfortunately for women, they think they own the kids. They don't. They don't own the kids, but they think they own the kids. And so they do these to the father and then make you fight. And then you spend all your resources. So again, my case is extreme, but believe it or not, most cases would be extreme because most fathers don't fight because they know that this is what's going to happen. Now, most people don't have $50,000 and $20,000 to give her in child support on a BS child support case. It was a BS case because had it been 50-50 or had my daughter move with her and my son move with me, there wouldn't have been no child support. Okay. My daughter would have aged out and that would have been a wrap. Okay. Now I would have paid her to stop messing with my kids more than she actually got in child support. But that's another story. But that's what happens when you act a monkey. You would have got way more from me with a little bit of honey instead of vinegar. And that's why you have to fight. So anyway, that is my story. And yes, it's a celebration. And yes, there's no private investigator. There's no more of that. Her attorney has dropped her. She has no more fight. I checkmated her. The kids have aged out. One kid ages out. One kid's going to be with me full time. And that's the end of it. All she has is going to be poisoning future weddings, potential funerals and college and first job and driver's licenses and, all of the kids' future achievements and things that you organize, grandkids, things that you organize your life around your family. All of that's poison because she has a poison heart. And of course, I'm bitter because of what I had to go through to fight. Now, I know I will never do this again. And this is why I encourage men to be careful what you're getting into when you're getting into these marriages. I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of people going through this. You just don't know it. And there's a lot of fathers going through this that can't afford to fight. And one of the reasons they can't afford to fight is the child support is not allowing them to be able to get enough money to build a defense. Now, because I was not W-2, I was able to avoid that and go around it. But that's my story. Get yourself in the comment section and hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll be back with more stories to help you out. Peace.